I recently decided to reread Macbeth, the play by Shakespeare. And as I was rereading it, The Tragedy of Macbeth or something, shit, I kept on getting like recommendations to watch this movie all of a sudden when I started reading this because they're watching. They're always watching. They're in the walls, they're in the phones, and they're always listening and they're always watching. And they want to sell me things. So I caved in, obviously. I watched this film and oh my God, it was amazing. And now I have to talk about it because they got me. They got me. Before I even started filming for this video or researching for it, I had actually previously been researching for a little Substack post that I made where I was talking about the transformative nature of this one poem by Stéphane Mallarme. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Do not come at me. How it went from this poem and then Claude Debussy was very inspired by it and made a very beautiful piece. How that also inspired a ballet. And following that thread, what I had recognized in it was how do you probably adapt a piece of work and transform it into another form of media with also being respectful to the original work. And I feel like the best way to do that is by enhancing certain elements of that work, if that makes sense. And I feel like this film does that perfectly. It enhances Shakespeare's original work and really puts the dialogue at a forefront. We've seen so many Shakespeare adaptations, usually most movies have a realism approach to how they'll film these remakes or adaptations. And I think one of the things that I really liked about this film in particular is that it plays really into like the theatricalness. It pays homage to the original setting of where this play was supposed to be, which is on stage in theater, right? I think the use of formalism really does a really good job of sort of incorporating elements of cinema and the stage, the theater. The movie is mostly shot on a static frame and on a very narrow aspect ratio, which I think does so well, not only just like aesthetically, but it strips away a lot of ornaments and all of these things that may distract the viewers and really helps us focus and hone in on the dialogue, while also it's still very aesthetically pleasing to look at, right? A lot of perfect lines, a lot of symmetry. I love that shit. I gobble that up. They used soundstage. Like none of the scenes are filmed in like real life places. And also with that, I think making it black and white, I think it just fits the vibe of the story of Macbeth. I think it fits the narrative very well, but I also think it also helps with that stripping of ornaments factor, right? And the director of this film, Joel Coen, spoke about this with the American Society of Cinematography, and he said the last thing we were interested in doing was a realistic adaptation of the play. Renting a castle in Scotland and people riding around on the heath, that sort of thing. Honestly, I'm so glad that they didn't do that because this, like I said, really just lets you concentrate on the work of Shakespeare, even with the editing. And it makes sense because Cohen, the director, he was a part of almost every step from cinematography to directing, obviously, and even in editing. So it kind of makes sense how it's very cohesive. There's a specific rhythm that the film follows, not only just in sound, but in motion and Shakespeare's ionic pentameter, the footsteps, his internal monologue.
So art thou a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat oppressed brain.
The shadows, the harsh light on imaginative dagger, and then the plate spinning.
Wake Duncan with thy knocking. I would thou couldst.
I think the purposeful throwing away of realism in this is perfect at paying homage to theater in that way. The perfect lines, the box, sort of almost like a theater box, like you were watching through the box. There is a scene that kind of like really scratched my brain where Ross is about to behead the former Thane of Corda who had just betrayed the king. As he's about to execute Ross, he tries to hand Macbeth the sword, and we cut to Macbeth with a scar on his neck, foreshadowing his own fate. Things like that really scratch my brain in ways that I can't explain to people who aren't into this sort of stuff. Speaking of paying homage to theater, the use of lighting, the sun, it literally looks like a spotlight. I loved the sharp shadows that, helped us distinguish night and day. I learned while reading up on this, the cinematographer, Bruno Del Bonell, and he was talking about how they got the very sharp shadows, especially in that night scene. And there are these very sharp shadows of that look like the light, maybe moonlight, is like coming through the windows. He spoke about how they actually use like a projector to do that. Again, the film is very respectable to the original work. You don't really need to read it. You could just watch this because the dialogue in this, it's almost exactly the same, but also it is nice to read, to have like the actual play in your hands while you are watching, because there are just so many instances where I was like, for example, the scene where Macbeth and Banquo meets the three witches for the first time. The camera is focused in on Macbeth, and then when Banquo says,
"Speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favor nor your hate,"
we get like a close-up shot of Banquo when this entire time we hadn't really seen him. When you read the play, it says that Macbeth speaks to the witches and they only answer him until that moment when Banquo says that line where they finally speak back to him. Do you know what I'm saying here? Like literally taking that concept of the witches weren't focused on Banquo, but were more focused on Macbeth, translating that text to a cinematic language. Like it sounds silly, but I just really like stuff like that. It makes me get very excited. Catherine Hunter's portrayal of the witches, I loved it. I feel like this is the most famous thing about this film in particular. These were the reels that I was seeing about this film. It was Catherine Hunter's scenes as the witches.
Peace. The charm's wound up.
I mean, amazing. Honestly, such an amazing performance. The use of making the witch just one person, making them birds, like making them crows who speak through one physical body. I think that that was very clever. I do wish, though, that her scenes were a bit more creepier. Because when I was reading Macbeth for the first time, when I was like in high school, I found the witches very, very creepy. The scene with the cauldron. Instead of like this weird, literally just a video being photoshopped on top of water, I really wish they had actual heads popping out of the water. Sort of like a other side of the box, that short film, that horror short film. I don't know if you guys have seen it. If you haven't, you should watch it. It's on YouTube. Other than that, I don't think I had any other complaints. Well, another complaint that I had in the beginning when I first started watching, I kind of wasn't a fan of how Denzel Washington read his lines. I felt like he wasn't following the pentameter that you usually know from Shakespeare, or that you'd usually hear from people who perform it on stage. But, everyone's different. And I think on my second watch, I kind of liked it. I liked how he sort of broke the rhythm in a way, because he did break rhythm a lot, and sort of like made it his own. So on my second watch, I really started to appreciate his way. Costume design, Duncan's cloak that had the stars on it. When Macbeth becomes king, those clothes do not fit him. The cloak is too big for him. He is unfit.
But signs of nobleness, like stars, shall shine on all deservers.
And the murder of Duncan here is so incredibly brutal. I think that in the play, you don't really feel it as much. You don't really feel the brutality as much, but the acting in that scene, Duncan waking up and being very innocent and unaware of what's about to happen to him because he's in the home of someone who he trusted. The murder of Duncan was very brutal to watch, and I think that does a great way amplifying the message of Macbeth, which is man's ambition and the atrocities that men are willing to commit in order to reach very materialistic, hedonistic goals. Something that I found very interesting is that when I was watching this, it reminded me of Faust. But when I was researching it, none of the directors and cinematographer didn't mention it. I feel like the films are very similar. No, I mean, even in set design, I think very similar. One of the reasons why Shakespeare will never die, in my opinion. Shakespeare, till this day, I mean, it's been hundreds of years, but till this day, we still read Shakespeare. We still watch ballet adaptations, movie adaptations. There's so many adaptations of Shakespeare's work. One of the reasons is because Shakespeare really hones in on something that will never change within us, all of us, no matter what generation, which is just like human error, humanness. Also, just the story of Macbeth, this sort of performance of masculinity. There's a lot of things packed into the story. I don't need to talk about it. It's been around for like a couple hundred years, a few hundred years. I'm pretty sure there are so many other people who are way smarter than me who've already spoken about this, but touches on gender and gender roles from Lady Macbeth. How she understands that her gender may stop her from being incredibly ambitious or because of how people perceive her. And Macbeth constantly trying to put on this performance of masculinity with the climate that we're in. I think that, like Faust, like Macbeth, it does right now feel like there's a dark cloud that has been brought upon by men's reckless and relentless ambition. Works like this will just never not matter. We always see the same things happening over and over again in history, which sucks because you think that we'd learn from history and do better, but we don't seem to. These are just sort of human aspects that always seem to come up no matter what time period we go into, and I think that they'll forever be with us. I have my notes here. This is, by the way, I binded this book myself. So I can show it. Looks very amateur. You could tell that I did it myself. I painted it myself. I think that is it. Thank you so much for making it this far into the video. I appreciate you. And yeah. Bye.